Hi, Candy from Blessed Life. This is probably one of the hardest topics I'll ever talk about or discuss with anybody. Anyways, I'm just going to get right into it. This is like a story time. I think this is my first story time, and it's my abortion testimony or whatever you want to call it. I want to go into a little history. I was always raised a Christian, and yet I believed that a woman had a right to choose. I believed that you had to have abortions legal because of all the women that were raped, all the little 12-year-old girls that were victims of incest, just for the multiple reasons that you still hear today. And, what about women who, the babies were deformed, had Down syndrome, all of the different things that people use as reasons to have abortions. And I was ignorant. And I remember so clearly. I was like 18 years old, and I was sitting in Wekiva Assembly of God in Florida, in Orlando, Florida, and it was a young pastor. And he was talking about abortion. And this was back in the 80s when there was a big push against abortions. And people from my church were going, and they were participating in standing outside of abortion clinics with signs and praying for people and everything. And I just kind of closed my eyes, and I was like, okay, this is just something I don't agree with, but, whatever you're doing. But he got up and he started preaching and talking about it. And I got so indignant, and I was like, how? He's a man. How come he has no voice? This is a woman's choice thing. This is a woman's right thing. Oh, it's a woman's body. You can't tell a woman she has to carry that baby when she doesn't want it. And, all the reasons, what if she's... And I got so enraged. I mean, I can remember the rage and how mad I was. And I remember I got up and I walked out of church. And I don't even think I ever went back to that church, which it was actually my girlfriend's church. I went to Calvary Assembly of God, but they were saying the same things, but I, just didn't go to any Sunday services that, it hit that point. And I was just so mad. And fast forward a couple years, and now we're into the 90s, and we're in Clinton, under Clinton. And this is, I voted for Clinton the first time. I was a Democrat. I was proud. I was a very proud Democrat. I was so excited about Clinton. I thought he was going to do such great things. I had such hope for him. I really can identify with a lot of the African Americans that have become conservatives after Obama, because they talk about the same thing, this feeling of, when they voted for Obama, they felt like he was, just going to be this savior, and he was going to do such great things, and they had such hope and everything. And I felt that way about Clinton. And after the first 4 years, by the end of the 4 years, I was like, I'm not going to vote for you again. And this is what really changed my mind about abortions, is when during the Clinton era they began to support what was termed the partial birth abortion. And I just watched on Netflix, I can't remember the name of it, I think it's Roe versus Wade or something like that. It's a documentary, and they mention partial birth abortions, and they say that they're a lie. But no, it isn't a lie, because I know it isn't a lie, because I lived through that time, and I remember what was going on at that time, and I remember that it was something true and happening, and I didn't believe it. I remember I was sitting in my work, and I was sitting next to a very conservative Christian who went to a very conservative Christian church, and she started to tell me about partial birth abortions, and I said, oh my gosh, that's like the silent scream that I saw when I was in high school and in Calvary Assembly of God, and you guys are just fanatics, and you're telling lies about what abortion is, because you want to, you don't want women to have a choice, and nobody in their right mind would do what was described as part of a partial birth abortion. And something in me, even as I was angry, it was angry at her again. I felt that anger again. And so I went home and I started doing research. And I realized, and this is when liberal press was, controlling the talk about the abortions and everything. This is not now when you didn't have Fox News, you didn't have a lot of conservative outlets telling the truth. You had only, the liberal news and pushing the women's rights movement agenda of abortion on demand. And so when I started doing research and I found out it was true and it was real, and they were doing abortions where they were bringing the baby partially out of the woman and then sticking a needle in its head and sticking saline and other chemicals into the baby and killing it and then pulling it out all the way after it was dead. And I was just like horrified. And I thought, how can anybody support this? And yet everybody was. Everybody was. And I actually went back to my Christian coworker and I went and I told her, I have to apologize to you because I called you a fanatic. I called you, said that you were just making things up and you were telling the truth, and I'm sorry. And I apologized to her, and that turned me against Clinton, number one, and I was very disappointed in him. And also, it just started turning I started thinking about what abortion was and what really it was and how it happened and why it happened. And I started doing research. And if you do the research and you look up Margaret Sanger and everything that she said and everything that she did and everything that she stood for, she was a genocidist. This woman was into genocide, and who she wanted to kill most were African Americans. But, poor Hispanics would have been targeted by her if they were around basically anybody poor, anybody that she deemed not intelligent, not worthy. She thought that having babies was just, not a good thing for anybody. Even, but if somebody was supposed to have babies, it should be, of course, the elite, the, intelligentsia that's having all these kids. And so if you look and then you start researching, even now if you research, about a year ago, it came out the truth about Planned Parenthood. And that they actually are using these babies in their stem cells and they're selling them and they're selling their body parts and they're ripping these babies apart out of the womb. And it's a horrifying situation that it's like, I can't even imagine how a person can do that. I really don't. And I know that women are still being lied to, and they're said, they're told, well, no, that it's just a zygote, it doesn't feel anything, it's just, it's just a mass of cells at this point, it has no feelings, it has no, sense, it has no, but that's a lie. If you get the book, What to Expect When You're Expecting, and you look at 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, it's amazing how it's a baby, folks. It's got developing eyes and legs and ears and hearts and noses and all the parts, and it does have feelings and it can feel, and they know that from the ultrasounds and stuff, when they put things in the mama, the baby kind of runs away from it and stuff, and so they know that it's not just something that's just a mass of cells. It's not just, like I cut my fingernail. It's not the fingernail that I cut off. It is a baby, and it is a living, breathing creature. And in the Bible, God tells us He knitted us in the womb. He knew us before we were born. He knows the number of hairs on our head. And so as Christians, there's no way a Christian can support abortions because we know what they are. And, it's just insane. And I saw Allie Stuckey, it's the girl that I think she's replaced Tommy Lahren. She was talking about abortions and that it's insane, and the New York law, and now they've shut down the law that if a baby survives an abortion, a doctor has a legal obligation to save that baby. And when you read the comments, everybody's like, "Oh yeah, you're against abortion, but you're for the death penalty." Okay, the death penalty and the abortion, they're totally different. And for example, the death penalty, I'm sorry, but for example, Helter Skelter guy, Charlie, whatever his name was, and his whole group of people, they got the death penalty and they deserved it. And if they hadn't escaped it, because California is so crazy and did away with the death penalty at one point, they deserved that death penalty. They were adult human beings who knew exactly what they were doing. And they were not innocent. They were guilty of murdering and brutally torturing people. And so, yeah, they deserve the death penalty. And all you're doing when you bring that up is you're defending a murderer. You're defending the abortion clinics and the abortion doctors and nurses and everybody that goes along with it. They're murderers. Okay? You're defending them. And you're defending the mother who is legally murdering her baby. What is the point in the Laci Peterson law? If, why should Peterson be in prison for not only killing Laci, but killing his baby? He shouldn't be in prison for killing his baby. He should only have gotten his sentence for killing Laci. There should be, this other guy that I think he just killed his pregnant wife and 2 kids. Well, and let's face it, maybe he should have just the kids weren't grown yet. They weren't, they were out, but, being out of the womb now, you can still be murdered. So, when is it murder? How old do you have to be? A 2-day-old baby doesn't know anything. It's, barely, all it can do is sleep, eat, poop, and pee. It's not really going to get up and walk and go to work yet. It's not going to talk. So, how sentient is it? And so then, is it legal to kill a 2-day-old? When do we draw the line? When do we stop? When do we say murder is murder? And I'm not advocating by any stretch of the imagination the death penalty for people that are in the abortion business or the mothers, because I do think most of the mothers, I don't think they're that ignorant. I think that I think it's impossible nowadays to be as ignorant as, say, we were back in the 80s, because back in the 80s we didn't have a lot of the ultrasounds weren't so clear, and we didn't have a lot of the different technologies that we have today to know about the development of a baby. But I don't think that they're as ignorant as they claim or as they seem to be. They cling to that, it's just a mass of cells. But I think that there's somewhere in their head they know after so many weeks it's way more than just a mass of cells. It's a baby. And they know that they're doing wrong. They know that they're supporting wrong. Even if you don't have an abortion. I never had an abortion. I just supported the pro-abortion movement. And even though I did it out of ignorance, I don't think that women today have as much ignorance. And I think that it is a societal thing. And I think that as Christians, we have to realize that people, they're brainwashed in the school system. You know, in science class, you're still told that it's just a mass of cells and it's okay to have an abortion in biology class. In social science class, civics class, history class, you're taught about how Roe versus Wade was such a landmark case and so important for women's rights and blah, 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 blah. In fact, there's only 2 cases that I remember being Supreme Court cases that I remember learning in U.S. history or civics. Roe versus Wade was one, and the other one, I don't even know the name of it anymore. I don't remember who it was, but it was the landmark case where they declared they didn't rule on whatever the case was exactly, but they ruled that the law that the person broke or they were trying to uphold or whatever was unconstitutional. And that was the 2 cases that I remember. And I don't even remember and the other one is like the landmark case of all landmark cases for the Supreme Court. Don't even remember the name of that. But of course, you Roe versus Wade is just like drilled into our minds, into our conscience, and that it was a good thing, and that, you know, all women need to support this. And so as Christians, we need to realize that education, we're not going to stop abortions by law. Okay, there are always going to be women, as long as they have a wrong mindset about what a baby is, and their rights, and have these wrong ideas about their freedoms and all of this, and have wrong thinking. There's always going to be abortions, and there's always going to be male doctors that carry out the abortions, men that get these girls pregnant and pay for the abortions, men that get the women pregnant and then say, I don't want to have the baby. You know, it's always going to be that way until we change their heart. And so we've really got to share Jesus, because when you share Jesus and when people know who Jesus is and come to Christ, He will open their eyes. I mean, I was in the church and still mad about the situation. It took God a while to knock on that door. I had a lot of stuff. You know, I wasn't perfect. So there were a couple things that God had to work on me. But finally he got to that door, you know, that abortion stronghold, and He knocked on it and He said, you can't keep thinking that way. You can't, you know, this is the real about abortions. And I woke up. And I think that that's what we have to do. We have to be on our knees constantly praying for these abortion doctors to realize what they're doing wrong, and all the people involved in the abortion clinics to realize how wrong they are and walk out and then tell the truth about what they see. That's another important step. And it does happen one person at a time. And we have to start praying for our kids that are in school that are their minds are being twisted and warped with all of these wrong thinking and crazy ideas that are being put in their heads. And it's not just Roe versus Wade, and it's not just abortion, it's the LGBT community's agenda. It's just 100 million things that they're teaching that are so wrong. Even literature that kids are reading nowadays. I mean, it just boggles my mind sometimes, the literature that's coming out, even in middle school kids, some of the books that are coming out. So we have to pray. We have to pray for the hearts of the nation. And we do. Laws will help, but there's always going to be somebody that's going to want to have an abortion. And so it's the hearts of every human being that we've got to touch and teach their minds, and pray for the scales to come from their eyes. Pray for their minds to be open to the truth. Pray for their hearts to be open about these babies that are being murdered. Pray for them to have hearts that know the truth. And pray for the people that know the truth to speak it. Because it's very, very powerful when you hear the testimonies of people who walk away from the abortion clinics and they tell their stories and they tell the truth. It's very, very powerful. And, God forgives everything, okay, including murder. So if you're out there and you paid for a girlfriend to have an abortion, or you had an abortion or whatever, God forgives everything, okay? But you don't have to stay mad and stay in that entranced, what I did was right, what I did was right, what I did was right for me, me. No, put your eyes on God and give it to God and let Him heal your heart. And, and it's a long walk and it's a hard walk, because once you realize the impact of having an abortion on you will be heavy. And it's not just women. Like I said, it's men. There are men that, we never hear about the men. We never hear about the husbands and the boyfriends and the rapists and all of the men that are responsible for these abortions happening just as much as the women. We don't hear about that. And we don't hear about just, the male liberals. Like, I don't know. I doubt Obama's wife ever had an abortion. I don't know. But I just don't see them as that kind of people. But yet, he supported abortion. So even these liberal men who, support it, let's pray for them. It's not just the women. It takes two to make a baby. And, we are at an important time, because I think that there's a quickening in this world, and I think that there are many Christians who are really coming to know Christ and who He is, and really grace is just abounding and being preached everywhere, and people are knowing so much more. And I think that we have a righteous indignation and against this crime of abortion, but at the same time we have to look compassionately at the people, and we have to pray for them, and we have to pray to God that He changes their hearts, because we can't. And screaming and yelling at them is not going to do it. It just entrenches them, And it's like a 5-year-old, when a 5-year-old wants something and you tell them, no, you can't have it. They're like, well, the hard-headed ones. I mean, there are also easygoing ones that you tell no, and they're like, okay, and they go off. But you don't want to do that either. And you don't want to, I'm not going to say you don't want to offend them, because I'm to a point where, everybody's so offended by everything, it's impossible not to offend. But you do have to show compassion. And you have to say, look, I know you did this, but, and we have to call out the people that are such hypocrites, like Gloria Steinem, because she's supposed to be this big woman's lib. But honestly, what have you done for me lately, Gloria Steinem? Since the 60s, 50 years ago, the wage is still lower for women. This and that and everything else, according to you, is still bad for women. So besides killing my baby, what right have you given me? How have you helped me, Gloria Steinem? You have not helped me one iota. So, and she's a hypocrite. She really is. So call them out. But, the individual people need love. They need to see that God will forgive them. It doesn't, He forgave Paul. Paul was responsible for Stephen's murder, and he was so gung-ho after he saw Stephen get stoned, he was running around getting permissions to get everybody else stoned. And David sent an innocent guy to his death because he wanted his wife. So we're all guilty. And we all have blood on our hands in one way or another. We have Jesus' blood on our hands because of our sins. He died. So just pray about it. And I hope that this has helped somebody. I hope that maybe there's people like me that have experienced and they're like, they know they've got that little knowledge. They're hearing about these laws that are being passed or not passed, and they're like, this doesn't sound right. This, everything that I believed, I'm not sure about it. And if it is that way, reach into your heart. Google and find out the truth about how horrible abortion really is, and criminal. And I mean, just, it's sickening when you hear about the procedure that they do. And just, allow God to work in your heart. And even if you've had an abortion, yes, I mean, grieve for that baby, but know that, it does matter, but it can be forgiven. God will forgive you. He loves you so much. He will wrap you in his arms and say, I forgive you, my child. You don't have to keep holding on to, it's right, it's good, and keep holding on to a lie that you know in your heart is not a lie. It's not the truth. Anyways, I don't know. I just had a lot in my heart because of everything that's been going on about abortion, and I hope this helps somebody. God bless you. Have a blessed day. And this is the kind of content I create. So if you like it, please subscribe, hit the like button, and see you soon. 10:30 on Sunday, we are going to have a live session. Our first live stream, me and Jorge. And it's going to be kind of an open house church. It's probably just going to be me and him this Sunday. We are inviting friends on Sundays to our church, to our house for a house church, but most of them have church, and we don't want to, step on anybody's toes. But if you'd like to come and hear about grace and love, just come on and have a blessed day. Bye-bye.